Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Well, this theme of effortless effort is something that I like to talk about very frequently. It's, I think, a very significant subject in terms of Buddhist practice. Those of us who aspire to use the Buddha's teaching in order to make our lives, say, more harmonious and more peaceful, to make the best use of this opportunity of human birth. And particularly because not just in the Western world, but all around the planet, the way that we relate to work, to doing, to activity and engagement, so that I would say for all of us, in whatever country we're living, whatever kind of background that we're from, it's commonly the case that any kind of doing, any kind of work is considered to be stressful. We look forward to the day to be over. We look forward to the weekend. We look forward to the retreats, or we look forward to retirement. We look forward to our holidays. We take, even a meditation sitting can be stressful. And many of you have heard Dhamma talks from me before, and we've been in the same meditation hall together, and will have heard me say this same thing over and over. But it is remarkable how when you ring the bell at the end of a sitting, there is a communal sense of relief, not just because we can unwrap our legs and help our knees to be a bit more comfortable, or to stretch our back, but there, again, without being able to read anybody's mind, there's a sense of even meditation is a doing, is a thing that is stressful, and that when the bell goes, there's a feeling of relief or peace or ease, because I don't have to be doing that meditation thing anymore. So there's a natural feeling of relaxation or spaciousness or ease. And again, this is not a matter of mind reading, but just how we are as human beings. It's extraordinarily common and strange, because the meditation is supposed to be the peaceful part. And when the meditation is over, then that's often a breaking of the peaceful, or in a way that peaceful or particularly clear or focused quality is coming to an end. So for a few people, that's the case. But in ordinary worldly attitudes that we tend to have, it's very, very common that even doing meditation, doing the practice, is something that is hard work, it's stressful, it's burdensome, and we're glad to have a break. So I feel it's helpful, it's important for us to be looking at that and to consider, well, hey, that's weird. How come the meditation is a burden, and to stop the meditation is where I feel more relaxed, more at ease, and more peaceful? That's completely the wrong way around. So I feel is something that's important to look at. Also, another aspect of this is how many spiritual teachings will relate to any kind of doing or any kind of goal, any sort of direction. Having a goal as something that's very worldly or very dualistic, like I am here, I want to get there, and that kind of dualistic thinking or worldly thinking is taken as not very wise, or as an inferior point of view. And so you get teachings, books published with names like Journey Without a Goal, or Truth is a Pathless Land. I would say, yes, there is a certain truth in that from a wisdom perspective, if there's an attachment to a goal, I'm here, I want to get there, and if I get there, then I will be happy. That is a worldly attitude. But I feel that a number of spiritual teachings have gone too far, or that people interpret them in such a way as, or therefore any kind of doing, any kind of practice, any kind of process or structure is a burdensome, it's worldly, it's a shallow way of thinking. And it can be taken to be sort of very wise, a kind of transcendent perspective, a sort of lokuttara, sumsut, the kind of the highest perspective, to say no path, no goal, no practitioner, no nothing. But yeah, even as you're saying those words to somebody, no path, no goal, no practitioner, you're talking, there's somebody talking to somebody else. You're reading a book that somebody's written that says no path, no goal, no practitioner. So somebody has written a book, and somebody's published a book to say those things. So I feel it's in a way a misunderstanding of those high teachings, those wisdom teachings and that it's a way that we are not understanding the Buddha's teaching on effort and on the practice of the Eightfold Path. So that the very fact that the Buddha talks about a path, the absolutely central foundational teaching of the Buddha, it's a path, magga, the Noble Eightfold Path, the Arya Marg. So right there, the very center, the very foundation of the teaching, the Buddha is talking about a path. And a path is not just a mark on the ground. A path is a track that leads from one place to a destination, to a goal. So I feel it's important to understand the Buddha did use that kind of language of progress to be made, a path to be followed, a goal to be headed towards. The Buddha was not shy about using that kind of language. It's quite prominent, central in the teaching, the Noble Eightfold Path. That's of the Four Noble Truths. That's the cure. That's how you get from truth number 2, the cause of suffering, to truth number 3, the ending of suffering, is through the application of truth number 4, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. So I feel it's really helpful to consider, okay, the Buddha did talk about a path and a goal. And so that implies that there has to be a way that we give direction to our lives, and also that we can have a goal, that is set. We make a direction in our life. There has to be a way that's completely in accordance with reality, in accordance with Dhamma, and there has to be, otherwise you couldn't get the second element of the Eightfold Path, Samma Sankappo, right effort, right intention, right resolution, right aspiration. That couldn't exist. There couldn't be that Samma Sankappo unless that was in its essence peaceful, unless that was in its essence in accordance with Dhamma. So there has to be a way that we give direction to our lives, our actions, our words, our intentions, that is completely peaceful, that is not creating dukkha, difficulty, or stress at all. Otherwise, if you follow the logic, and people can ask questions later on, Samma Sankappo couldn't exist. There couldn't be a right aspiration, a right resolution, a way of aspiring or giving direction to this life. That couldn't exist as an element of the Eightfold Path, unless there was some way that direction can be given that is completely in accordance with Dhamma. Similarly with Samma Vayamo, the 6th factor of the Eightfold Path, right effort, that couldn't exist unless there was a way that effort can be made that is completely in accordance with Dhamma, that effort is not producing any kind of stress or tension or dukkha of any kind. So I feel this is very helpful for us to consider, whether we're a lay practitioner or a monastic, whether we're new to this or we've been doing it for 30, 40, 50 years. It's good to look at, because if we consider that any kind of effort, any kind of direction is contrary to the Dhamma, then we are trying to sort of switch off or nullify, negate our life. Like, don't feel, don't see, don't think, don't do anything. And as if we're kind of trying to freeze ourselves or nullify our life and taking that to be nibbana. So I would say that's a very a completely incorrect understanding of the Buddha's teaching, even though it's often a way that people relate to things. They say that it's a path of peace, and they take that peace of like of inaction or passivity, or they call quietism in Western philosophy, trying to not do, not engage, not interfere. But I would say that that's that kind of attitude is a doing, but it's in the category of what we would call vibhava tanha, the desire to not be, the desire to not feel, the desire to annihilate perceptions and thoughts and feelings, to wipe things out. And that vibhava tanha, the Buddha named as one of those causes of suffering, the causes of dukkha. In his description of the second noble truth, the cause of dukkha, there's bhava tanha, the desire to become, and vibhava tanha, the desire to get rid of, the desire to not be, to not feel, to be annihilated. So I feel that it's good to look at this area to understand how it can be that direction can be given and effort can be made, how there can be samma sankappo, samma vayamo, that is stress-free, that is not burdensome or something that is causing tension and dukkha in our lives. The framework we often give is that, you know, I should do something now in order to, I'm an unenlightened person and I need to do something now in order to become an enlightened person in the future. And this is a phrase Luang Por Sumedho would often use in his teaching. He say that that's the general way. If we're a spiritual practitioner, and nakpatipat in Thai language, if we are someone who's inclined towards spiritual development, who wants to develop the spiritual life and use the Buddha's teachings, we can easily take that as a framework. I am an unenlightened person, yes. That certainly seems to be true, and I need to do something now in order to become an enlightened person in the future. And that's the framework that we use, and so that we are sort of taking that as an absolute reality. But what Luang Por Sumedho would point out was that, well, yes, it's true, but it's also not true. It's not the whole story. And that we shouldn't take that as an absolute reality, but take that as a sammuti satya, a conventional truth, or a seen as a worldly way of looking at things. And so, so for example, when we look at right effort, samma vayamo, and when I use the word right, it's not exactly the same as right as opposed to wrong. Samma is more connected to being in harmony with things. The Buddha, when he spoke about that quality of samma, that sense of the qualities of the Eightfold Path all being, say, fulfilled or purified, that word samma doesn't just mean right as opposed to wrong. It more means in harmony. So like if you have a stringed instrument in the Pali language, when they talk about the strings of a veena, like a sitar or a guitar, a stringed musical instrument, that when the strings are in tune, they are samma. it's not spelled exactly the same, but the words are connected. So that if they're too tight, then it's sharp. If they're too slack, then it's flat. If they are just right, if they are sama, then the instrument, all the strings of the instrument are in tune and they harmonize with each other. So it's helpful to consider the 8 factors of the Eightfold Path, that sama is a quality of attunement, being in tune with Dhamma, in tune with nature, in tune with reality. So when the Buddha is analyzing or speaking in detail about samma vayamo, that effort which is in tune with reality, effort which is, say, is peaceful and leading towards greater peace, then he broke that into 4 parts, what are called the 4 samapadanas, or the four kinds of striving, or 4 aspects of effort that lead towards peacefulness, that are in tune with Dhamma. So the first one is samvara in the Pali. Samvara, sangwon in Thai language. Samvara means restraint. And so that first aspect is restraining the unwholesome from arising, so that the effort to not allow the mind to bring up feelings of anger or jealousy or selfishness or laziness or attachment and clinging, grasping, sense desire, and so on. So the effort to restrain, samvara, that's factor number 1. The second factor of these 4 is pahana, pahanati, which pahana means to let go. So if unwholesome states have arisen, if there's already anger or fear or jealousy or selfishness or greed or grasping, if that has arisen, then the second kind of right effort which is in tune with Dhamma, is to let go. So an angry feeling arises, or a jealous feeling, or a lazy feeling, it's here, it's already arrived. Then pahanati is to let go, to relinquish, to loosen the grip on that. The third factor then relates to the cultivation of wholesome qualities, is bhavana, so the conscious development of concentration, of loving kindness, of compassion, of wisdom, of clarity, of awareness, and so forth. So the conscious, deliberate development of what is wholesome, what is liberating and noble. And then the fourth one is, if the wholesome has arisen, if the mind is concentrated, if there is loving kindness, if there is compassion, wisdom, and so forth, then the effort is made to sustain that. Anurakana is the Pali. So those 4, again, it's a little Pali lesson: samvara, pahana, bhavana, anurakana. Restraining, letting go, cultivating, maintaining. Those are the 4 samapadanas, the 4 aspects of striving or effort that are in tune with Dhamma. So hearing that might sound very like the desire to become, or and the desire to get rid of. I was just talking about vibhava tanha, the desire to get rid of, the desire to not feel or not be. So you might think, hey, but what, how is that the restraining the unwholesome from arising and letting go of the unwholesome, how is that not vibhava tanha? Or the cultivation of the wholesome, trying to get concentrated and trying to be more compassionate, trying to have greater loving kindness and awareness. How is that not bhava tanha, the desire to become, the desire to be? And so that is a very can be a very confusing area of practice. And so that, for those of you who've been students of Luang Por Sumedho for many years, or even just recently, you'll have noticed, well, he talks a lot about bhava tanha and vibhava tanha, because this is, an area, again, of great difficulty, because the habit has been, for most of us, I would say, mostly we relate to trying to get concentrated, to get insight. The bhava tanha habit takes over, then it becomes stressful. Or because of the wanting to get rid of our distracted thoughts, wanting to get rid of our defilements, to kind of dap kile in Thai language, to put out the fires of defilement, that gets taken over by vibhava-tanha, the desire to get rid of that, and that is stressful. As long as our motivation, our effort, and our direction in practice is guided by and driven by bhava-tanha, vibhava-tanha, then the result will be dukkha. It's like right there in the teaching on the Four Noble Truths, that's labeled as that's a direct cause of dukkha, bhava-tanha, vibhava-tanha, the desire to become, the desire to get rid of. So the key piece is in the difference between those two, which are the cause of dukkha, and the four aspects of right effort, effort which is in tune with Dhamma, is that those four, restraining, letting go, cultivating, maintaining, those can all be brought into being and actualized completely free of self-view. There's no self-view, there's no I, no me, no mine, no tuaton, no duaku kongku in Thai language, or as Ajahn Buddhadasa would say, that those aspects of samma vayamo, right effort, and also samma sankappo, the direction towards peace, towards liberation, those can all be actualized, those can all be brought into being and fulfilled completely free of any I or me or mine. And that's why they are part of the Eightfold Path. That's why they are liberating. On the other side, bhava-tanha and vibhava-tanha, the desire to become, the desire to get rid of, those are always woven together, mixed up together with tuaton, with I and me and mine, with self-view, with conceit. And so that's why they lead to much greater suffering. So the problem arises, and why Luang Por Sumedho would talk so much about this, is that those two can look very, very like each other, just like the left hand and the right hand. In some ways, they're identical to each other, but also they're opposites. That the left hand and the right hand, yes, they match each other. You know, I've got a full set of fingers and thumbs. They match each other, but they're also the mirror image of each other. They're the opposite of each other. So I feel this is if we can really understand this, if this can be appreciated, then the effort can be made, the direction can be given, and that is not stressful, it's not burdensome. We're not waiting for the bell to ring. We're not waiting for the weekend or for our retirement or for a holiday. We're not waiting for the world to stop or for sensory consciousness to switch off in order for us to find peace. That it's not, the mind isn't taking refuge in an absence of stimulation, an absence of activity, but rather the mind is taking refuge in freedom from self-view, freedom from conceit. So there's a quality of awareness, of knowing, of engagement that is, free of any kind of I and me and mine feeling, and that's something that is refreshing and delightful and liberating. So just as if you are going for a walk and you're trying to get somewhere, you're trying to get to the metro station, or you're getting to your workplace, or getting to the park, you know, I've got to get there. It can be stressful. I've got to get there. And that the way the mind holds it can be even going for a walk in the park. You know, I'm trying to get to that place. That can be stressful. If the attitude changes and there is a freedom from conceit, a freedom from self-view, a freedom from I, me, mine, then we can be walking and covering ground. Like this morning, I went on a Bindabat walk from Amaravati Monastery into Berkhamsted. It's about a 4-mile walk. It takes about an hour and a half, especially nowadays when I'm very unfit. But if I'm fixated on trying to get to Berkhamsted, then it can be stressful the whole way along. If the mind has an attitude of just being with each moment, and then the body moves along and goes up and down the hills and stops when it needs to stop and goes when it needs to go, then the effort is made, the ground is covered, but it's not stressful or burdensome, problematic in any way. And the journey is made. There is a goal, Amaravati to Berkhamsted. The goal gets achieved without any kind of stress being created along the way. So 40 years ago, exactly 40 years ago, in 1983, this time, where it was now June the 2nd here, of 2023. So 40 years ago, early June, here in the UK, I was on a Tudong walk, a long walk through the countryside. I set off from Chithurst Monastery, Chitta Vivek, Wat Pa Chitta Vivek, on May the 7th, and I was walking through the English countryside on a long winding route all the way up to a branch monastery that had recently been opened up in Northumberland. Aruna Ratnagiri, well, it was called at that time Harnham Vihara, in Northumberland near the Scottish border. So it was a long walk with a very winding route. So I've been planning this Tudong for a long time. I was a very young monk. I was only 4 pansa, 4 reigns, 26 years old, or 25, 20, would have been 20, let's see, 1983, I would have been 26 years old. And the expectation of traveling through the country, this is like a unique undertaking, walking the whole length of England, was a big deal. And I was sort of young, restless monk, very inspired and looking forward to this journey. So it's very much focused on me here and walking all the way to Northumberland in the north of the country, about 1,200 kilometers, about 830 miles. So a good long walk. And so, and then the months of preparing the gear that we were needing. I made a new pair of sandals. A monk who'd been a shoemaker before he joined the Sangha taught me how to make a pair of sandals that we had crafted together. And then working out, getting fit, going for walks in the countryside around the monastery, and figuring out what kind of equipment we needed to take with us. And so it was all very sort of inspiring and exciting. And there was a sense of this long journey, the big adventure, this big undertaking. And the morning that we set off in May of 1983, Lumpur Sumedho gave a Dhamma reflection that day, and the two of us, myself and one layman, were going on this journey together. And he made the comment, actually, there's nobody going anywhere. There are just conditions of mind that are changing. And that was a wonderful teaching, that even as the body is moving along and the country lanes and pathways of England are passing under my feet, and the landscape is changing around of trees and hills and valleys and the open lands of East Anglia, or through the cities of London and Manchester and so on, that actually moment by moment, there's nobody going anywhere. There's conditions of mind, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. But at each moment, the mind is absolutely here, it's present. The mind doesn't really go anywhere. The world comes through the mind. And so that was a very helpful reflection, because on a worldly level, our conditioning is to be caught up in that me going somewhere, me on this long walk, me trying to get to the next village for the Bindabat, or me trying to get to the campsite, or me sort of getting up in the morning and preparing to get walking again. So that on a worldly level, in terms of the Sammuti Satya, the conventional truth, there's a lot of going, me here going, me aiming to go there. But moment by moment, in the actuality of experience, in the context of Dhamma, like right now, we can say that we're in Wisconsin, or we're in California, or in Thailand, or we're in London, wherever we happen to be geographically. But absolutely everyone on this Zoom event is here. Wherever you are, it's absolutely here, right? that you are the center of your world, and the world that you're experiencing is known through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, memory, and imagination, and it happens here. So if we recognize that the world is happening in our mind, even as we go about our tasks and our activities, even as the body is moving along. So then on that journey, setting out from Chitta through West Sussex, then through into the south of London, through the middle of London, out into Hertfordshire, into Cambridgeshire, into Suffolk, Norfolk, up into into Lincoln, and then crossing the River Humber into South Yorkshire, up through Yorkshire, through the Pennines, all the way into the Lake District, through Cumbria, and eventually to Northumberland. All those different names that might mean something to some of you, but nothing to others of you. But everywhere along the way, it was absolutely here. And the landscape changes, the body moves, and the body is still, but it all happens here. It's known here. And so that when that here-ness, that presence of mind is recognized, yes, there's a changing, there's a flow of perceptions, but there's an appreciation of that fundamental stillness, which is a stillness that is not just movement that has stopped, but it's a radical stillness that is timeless and unlocated. That's the fundamental piece of the Dhamma, is always here, that the mind is always absolutely here, is present. And that when Luang Por Chah used the expression still flowing water, it was referring, I would say, to exactly this combination of qualities. Perceptions and thoughts, they flow and they change. There's flowing, but that which is aware of the change and flow of perceptions and thoughts, that is absolutely still. So he would say the mind is like still flowing water. There's the flow of perceptions and thoughts, but there is the fundamental, the radical stillness of the mind, free of time, free of space, free of identity. So it's hard to think that it was 40 years ago, but again, like location and like the changes of perception, time is also just another construct that the mind creates. So we can, on a worldly level, you say, oh, that was 40 years ago, but Dhamma is timeless, is akaliko. So in many ways, I would say that 40 years passing is just a manner of speaking, and that the Dhamma is exactly the same now as it was 40 years ago or 1,000,000 years ago. The Dhamma is timeless. The time does not apply to the realm of Dhamma. So this is perhaps an unusual reflection, but again, those of you who've listened to Luang Por Sumedho's teachings will have heard him talk about this a lot, that the world is in the mind. And it's not just a mind game or a kind of trick of perception or just some kind of way of entertaining yourself, but if this perspective can be established, then peace can be found in even radically changing environments, a lot of activity and movement and noise and color and say engagement that can be happening in the sensory field, even with us participating in conversations or activities or movement, but that which is knowing even a lot of colorful engagement and movement and decision making, even that is not limited by that, it's not bound by that, it's not intrinsically caught up in that. So peace can be found in the midst of activity. So when we talk about effortless effort, it's when the heart is awake to that role of knowing, and it knows that the world arises and passes away. In the sphere of this awareness, that's where effort can be made that is effortless. That engagement can be happening and attuned to that reality. And the key piece of what makes it effortless effort is not self, is anatta, the insight into not self, and that letting go of the habits of self-centered thinking, the attitudes of I and me and mine. That's the key piece, that effortlessness, that ease with which engagement can happen, that only arises when there's a self-view has been let go of, been seen through, and been known as completely empty. There's a dialogue in the suttas, I think, between Venerable Sariputta and another of the great arahants, Mahakotita, where Venerable Sariputta is talking about a particular state of mind he had realized in meditation, where he was aware of the senses, but his mind wasn't attached to the senses at all. And the Venerable Mahakotita says, so in that state, what were you aware of? What was, if there was this sort of this radical letting go of the sense fields. The response that the Venerable Sariputta gave was, he said, what the mind was aware of, it was bhava nirodha nibbānam, bhava nirodha nibbānam. So, which means the cessation of becoming is nibbana. The cessation of becoming is nibbana. That's what the mind was aware of. So that detachment, that non-grasping, that non-entanglement with the sensory world, that was the cessation of becoming. It didn't mean that the world stopped, or the things, the perceptions didn't come and go. They were coming and going and changing, but the nirodha was that describing that quality of non-grasping, non-entanglement, non-identification. Bhava nirodho nibbānam, the cessation of becoming is peacefulness, is nibbana. So again, on a worldly level, we might think the cessation of becoming means stopping in your tracks. So we kind of are trying to sort of have no thoughts, no feelings, plug up your ears and close your eyes and numb the senses. And Luang Por Chah would say, if that was what nirodha meant, then we should, being blind and deaf and dumb and immobile and paralyzed, that should be seen as an advantage, or the Buddha would have talked about that as being the goal or the way to realize nibbana. He said, but he never did. That's completely wrong understanding. That's not the case. So that the bhava nirodha, the ending of becoming, is to do with the mind, realizing the mind that is not entangled, not identified, not engaged with the changing world. It knows the world, but it's not limited or attached or identified with the world. It is lokuttara. It's above the world, but it knows the world. It's lokavitu as well. These principles not just talking about the nature of the Buddha, but they're talking about the nature of our own mind as well. Also, it brings to mind the fact that it's Visakha Puja, the full moon day of Visakha, according to the Thai calendar, tomorrow. I know in Sri Lanka it was a month ago. The calendars don't quite match up, but the Visakha Puja here at Amaravati is tomorrow, and the festival over the weekend. And many years ago, Luang Por Panyananda, who was a close associate of Ajahn Buddhadasa, he would come to visit our communities in England. And Ajahn Panyananda was a very, very skilled Dhamma teacher, and very helpful to our community in the years when Luang Por Chah was paralyzed and couldn't speak, couldn't teach, couldn't travel. And he happened to be here at Amaravati one Visakha Puja, and he gave this very, very interesting teaching about the symbolism of Visakha and mind training. And he said, we think of Visakha Puja as describing the birth of the Bodhisattva in Lumbini, and coming into the world as Siddhartha Gautama, as a child of King Suddhodana and Queen Mahamaya, and living as a Bodhisattva, and then leaving the palace life, becoming a wanderer, a samana, then realizing full and complete enlightenment under the Bodhi tree at Bodh Gaya. He was born on the full moon of May. The Bodhisattva was born on the full moon of May. Then 35 years later, under the Bodhi tree of Bodh Gaya, the Buddha realized full and complete enlightenment, became the Buddha. And then 45 years later, on the full moon of May in Kusinara, under the sal trees near the village of Kusinara, then there was the parinibbana, the final passing away of the Buddha. So he said, well, we can consider these as events in the Buddha's life, whether they actually occurred on the full moon day of May in those years. That's up to the historians to decide, or the scholars, or those who consider those things. But he said it's not just a kind of mythological pattern that's described that all those three things happened on the same day. He said that is a teaching in itself, because it's describing, if we use that as a symbol, the pattern of experience in each moment. And so he said, if you bring that internally, the Visakha, the coming together of those three events in Visakha, is describing how to skillfully work with our minds and our perceptions and our thoughts. So he said the birth of the bodhisattva is like the arising of a thought or a feeling, something that we see, something we smell or taste or touch, an emotion, a memory. And so that's during the early years of the bodhisattva's life, there was an unawakened life. He was an ordinary boy, a child growing up, getting married, being a soldier, living the life of in the palace as a crown prince of a kshatriya, warrior, noble family. And so that's when a thought arises or a feeling, we take it to be true. We say, well, that's delicious, or that's ugly. I don't like the look of that. That's the wrong color. Or that, oh, that's this is a worrying thought. This is a problem. What am I going to do with this? So the formation has been born, and it does its thing in an unawakened environment. Then with the appreciation of dukkha, like being burdened by that worry, or not being able to own that beautiful thing, or not being able to keep that delicious taste, dukkha arises, and then the mind notices, oh, I'm attaching to this memory, or I'm attaching to this flavor, or I'm attaching to this color. So there's the working with it, and then the moment of enlightenment is, oh, it's just a flavor, it's just an emotion, it's just a color. That's all. It's a sankhara. It's a formation in nature. It's not me. It's not mine. Oh, it's just this. So that is symbolized by the moment of Bodhi under the Bodhi tree. That's the moment of enlightenment. We're not saying we're totally enlightened just because we know, oh, this is a thought, this is a memory. But that's in this way of using the symbolism of Visakha, it's describing this. And then the life of the Buddha, living the next 45 years and carrying on with his engagement with the living world and human life until the age of 80, passing away, the final passing away of parinibbana. That's like living with that anxious feeling, or living with that color, or knowing that thought or that emotion as it does its thing. It's still got that same pattern. It's still living through its cycle, but it's known as just a sankhara. It's just an empty formation. It can't be anything real, can't be anything solid, can't be anything substantial. It's just this, kenan, as it said in Thai language. It's only this. That's all it is. And then that thought comes to an end, that sound, that feeling, that color, that taste, it passes away. There's nirodha, cessation. And then that's symbolized by the parinibbana, that kind of conclusion. So I felt that was I still remember that teaching from, back in the late 80s, early 90s, when Ajahn Panyananda came to Amravati. And I feel it's a very helpful way to use the traditions, or the qualities of Visakha Puja. Say, yeah, it's not just a celebration of these events in the Buddha's life, but it's a celebration of the capacity that we have to be awake. And when the Buddha was having one time he was having a conversation with the Sangha, Ananda had been describing many of the events of the Buddha's life, the miraculous birth in Lumbini, how he was born with his mother standing up, and he walked and talked as soon as he was born, and saying, this is a wonderful, marvelous quality of the Tathagata, of the Blessed One, and how the devas had caught him when he was born and had washed him with warm and cool water coming out of thin air. And this was a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Buddha. And so all of these sort of miraculous and colorful aspects of the Buddha's birth, he described. And then the Buddha showed up in the Dhamma hall and said, "Oh, what were you talking about when I arrived? You know, you all stopped having this conversation when I showed up." And Ananda repeated that whole collection of sort of wonderful and marvelous events around the birth of the Bodhisattva. And the Buddha said, "Do you want to hear another wonderful and marvelous quality of the Tathagata?" You can go, "Oh, really?" Almost feel the Sangha kind of leaning forward to, wow, it's going to be something really interesting now. And the Buddha said, when the Tathagata, when a feeling arises in the mind of the Tathagata, he knows this is a feeling arising. When a feeling abides in the mind of the Tathagata, he knows this feeling is abiding in the mind. When a feeling fades away in the mind of the Tathagata, he knows this feeling is fading away. This too is a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Tathagata. So too with the perception, so too with the thought. These are wonderful and marvelous qualities of the Tathagata. So I feel it's exactly the same as Luang Por Paninanda's teaching, that yes, there are these sort of miraculous and colorful events like the birth, the enlightenment, the parinibbana, but what's really amazing is that we can watch our minds. That's the real miracle. And that's what the Buddha was conveying to Ananda and the group of Sangha members at that time, was that this is what really is amazing and wonderful about the Tathagata, is not the aspects of the life of the teacher, but the fact you can watch your mind, you can train your mind. Wow, that's amazing, that's wonderful, that's significant. So it's taking Ananda's enthusiasm and these exciting, colorful stories and saying, well, the reason why any of that has any value is because it means we can work with our minds, we can train our minds. So in terms of practicalities and how we can exercise this effortless effort on a daily basis, a way that Luang Por Chah talked about this, he would say that sometimes we, in Buddhist teachings, we talk about not clinging, and people assume it means we should never do anything or never pick anything up. But he would say, he would often take a flashlight, a torch. Here's a nice wooden stick here. He'd say that I can pick this up. I can pick up this wooden stick. It's actually a wooden bar for leaning on while you're painting or drawing or doing calligraphy. So you can pick this up and you can hold it and make use of it. And then when you finish using it, you can put it down. It doesn't have to be a burden, doesn't have to be stressful, doesn't have to be painful. You can know, oh, here it is. It's this wooden bar. It has its purpose in life. You can pick it up, apply it to its use, and then put it down again. So the difference is we shouldn't be afraid of picking things up, but we should be afraid of clinging. That to hold is not the same as to cling, and so that if we understand the difference between those two, then we can hold our family life, we can hold our job, we can hold our relationships with other people without clinging, without grasping. It's the clinging that is the cause of dukkha, and just to pick things up and to make use of them doesn't mean we should never pick anything up. We shouldn't work, or we shouldn't talk to our family, or we should ignore our body. But no, that's a wrong understanding. So hold, but don't cling. It was a simple way of applying that within our everyday life. And so when explaining this or talking about this, he would say, we're using desire, we're using wanting. And again, those of you who've read or listened to many of Luang Por Chah's teachings will know that he uses this kind of language very, very often. To say that we need desire, we need to wanting. We need to want to practice. We need to want to liberate the heart. But it's the aspect of clinging or grasping that is the factor that makes it problematic. And so it's also reflected in the Pali language that the kind of desiring or wanting that is always problematic is called tanha, craving, danha, kilet danha. And so almost invariably in the Pali canon, the word tanha has a negative meaning. I only know of one place in the whole Pali Canon where the word tanha is used with a wholesome meaning. Every other time, like 99.999% of the time, tanha has got a negative consequences. It has always got self-view and conceit wrapped up in it. So the tanha, the desire that is the cause of dukkha, is tanha. The other kind of desire that's useful, can be useful, and is necessary to be motivated and to engage with Dhamma practice or with our work or taking care of our responsibilities, is called chanda. In English letters, chanda, chanda. So that quality, chanda, it is a desiring, it's a wishing or a giving direction, but that can be completely free of self-view. That's a kind of desiring, a kind of directionality that doesn't necessarily bring any kind of dukkha, any kind of suffering with it at all. So when Luang Por Chah would explain, hold but don't cling, so that you can pick things up, use them, apply them, and then put them down. That kind of picking up and holding is chanda, and Dhamma chanda, the desire for the Dhamma, or the motivation, the interest, the enthusiasm for realizing the Dhamma, for waking up. That is Dhamma chanda. That's the desire for the Dhamma. That's something that's wholesome, that's liberating, and we shouldn't be afraid to be, say, cultivating and strengthening that quality of chanda. So I've offered quite a number of thoughts and ideas today, whether it's this morning or this afternoon or this evening. So it's 2:54 here in the afternoon at Amaravati in England. So I'd like to open things up for some questions if anybody has. So Yon Beam, if you'd like to look after that, I'd be very grateful.
Okay. Now I can see the first person, Mr. Chani.
Yeah, thank you very much, Administrator. Thank you very much, Luang Por. I got a very simple question to ask. You talk quite a bit about this effortless effort. So what I want to know is there any easy way of not striving in effort versus the effortless effort? Is there any simple way of thinking about it and doing it? You talk a lot and went quite a bit to explain it, but I haven't heard anything to say to simplify and do it.
Simple but not easy. So simple is don't let self-view motivate or influence any of your actions or your words. That's the key. Not easy to do.
Yes, yes. Very difficult, very, very difficult.
But very simple. As long as the heart is free of self-centered habits, then effort will be effortless. As soon as there is me involved, then there is a stressing. So when Luang Por Sumedho said the ordinary paradigm, the everyday paradigm that we work with is, I'm an unenlightened person who's got to do something now to become enlightened in the future, he would suggest change the paradigm to be awake now. That recognizing that I'm an unenlightened person, etc., that's a samuti satcha, that's a conventional truth. And if that's believed in, then right there's attachment to self-view. I am a person. No, the body is not self, feelings are not self, perception is not self, mental formations are not self, and so on. So to catch the mind making those views, I am a person, I am Chani. But no, you're not. Chani is a convenient fiction.
Yes,
It's a few letters on the screen. It's just when people say, "Who are you?" You say, "I am Chani." What does Chani refer to? What does that word? What is it here? Absolutely, that sound refers to. So, but we take it as automatic. No, I'm Chani. I'm not Jitta Subra. I'm not Kathy or Beam or Pun. That the mind that catches those assumptions and says, "No, I am that." No, you're not. That's the
Force
convenience.
and conditioning.
So that's simple, but not easy, because it takes a huge amount of
Effort.
mindfulness and sincere desire, Tanda, to to change that view.
Thank you, Longpo. Thank you.
Second person, Miss Alex.
Hello. Thank you very much for today. It is in fact morning here. I was wondering if you would mind speaking some more on Chanda. I know it was the last thing you discussed. I sort of got it, and I'd like a little more clarification, maybe.
Very good. Your Chanda, Chanda is sort of morally neutral. So it can be wholesome, like Dhamma Chanda, the desire for reality, the desire for awakening, the desire for freedom from defilements, and so it can be very wholesome. It can be neutral, like when it's time to brush your teeth, the desire to pick up your toothbrush, it's kind of neutral functional activity, or it can be unwholesome, the desire to rob a bank or to cheat on your taxes. So Chanda is morally neutral. It's just it can be translated as desire or enthusiasm or zeal. So it's that igniting quality. I'm interested. So maybe even the word interest is one of the best ways of translating it. Interest, enthusiasm, desire. So in another of the Buddha's lists of qualities called the bases of success, the Iddhipada, Chanda is the first that. So to succeed at anything, whether it's in realizing enlightenment, whether it's in brushing your teeth, or whether it's in robbing a bank, that these four qualities are needed in order to carry out that activity, succeed at anything. Obviously, the wholesome ones are the ones that are encouraged, but the four, first one is Chanda, which is interest or enthusiasm. You have to be interested to do it. The second is Virya. You have to apply energy. You've got to actually pick up the toothbrush, or you actually got to make the effort to train your mind and so on. And then the third is Chitta, which in this instance means consideration. Like, okay, how am I going to do it? What's the way this is going to be carried out, or how am I going to do this? So those three work together at the beginning, and then the fourth one is a kind of follow-up to those three. So those first three are sort of preparing and engaging, and then the fourth one is reviewing, or vimangsa. Vimangsa.
Vimangsa.
Vimangsa, yeah, exactly.
Thank
so
you.
Vimangsa is like, well, did it work? Did I? What's the result of the meditation? What's the result of my plan to brush my teeth? Or what happened with me trying to rob the bank? Like, oh, I ended up in jail. Oh, my teeth are clean. Okay, or like, oh, my mind is more peaceful than it was before. So the vimangsa is what guides further action. So it's the kind of feedback process. Did it work? Did it not work? What was the result of it? I had a good intention, but maybe my application to that task created more difficulty and struggle between myself and somebody else. Oh yeah, I had a good intention, but it had a painful result. Aha. So the vimangsa is that looking at cause and effect, and then that learning from how cause and effect work together, then that informs, okay, well, I shouldn't have gone left, I should have taken a right instead. Would have been a better way to go. So those four qualities, the four bases of success, the Iddhipada, that in a way is saying that Chanda is a sine qua non. It's like a necessary condition for all the work that we do, whether it's our job to support our body, our health, our family, and our well-being, whether it's spiritual development, or wherever it might be. Those four qualities are needed. And so that when Ajahn Chah would say over and over again, many of his teachings, so this was reading one out to the community this morning. Like, we need that desire, that chanda. That's necessary, but then it's then preventing chanda from drifting into tanha, the craving. That's one of the challenges, because they can
I
look
think
like
that's the piece I was missing.
and that's like I was saying about the left hand and the right hand, that they're opposites in some respect, like chanda, Dhamma chanda and tanha are opposite, but they're also very, very like each other.
Yes.
So that one can easily be mistaken for the other. So part of the development of the practice is learning to recognize, is this really chanda, or is this drifted into me wanting to become peaceful, or me wanting to get somewhere in my practice, or me trying to get rid of my problem?
That answers my question very well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Next person, Miss Nalanda.
กราบนมัสการพระอาจารย์ค่ะ Hello everyone and hello Ajahn. It's currently midnight in Melbourne. Yes, but it looks wonderful there in the UK, nice and warm.
Yes, the wisteria is billowing on my veranda.
I'm sure it's wonderful and beautiful.
The afternoon
My first question is about the man in the picture frame behind you. He looks very intriguing. And my second question is about effort in meditation. I meditate every day, and I try to have a little group of friends who meditate every day. And I've been having a lot of dullness, a bit of drowsiness, a little bit. So there's a lot of effort to try and keep the mind on the breath. I have been told also that at some stage I should try and drop the effort and just see how it goes from there. Maybe there's a bit too much effort and a bit too much tension going on. So maybe just a few comments about effort in meditation there. Thank you, Ajahn.
Yes, certainly. The picture behind me is a photograph of a great master Shu Yun, and he was a Chinese monk. He made a vow to be a bhikkhu for 100 years, and he lived to be 120, so he kept his resolution. He was so highly respected in China that he was appointed the Sangharaja, the head of all 5 lineages of Buddhist practice in China. The Chan school, the Sutta study school, the mantra recitation school, the esoteric school, and the Vinaya school. They all appointed him as the Sangharaja. So he was so highly revered and universally respected that everybody, and there's often, wouldn't say squabbling, but say differences of opinion between different lineages, but they all respected him. And he, at the age of 114, he gave a Chan session in the monastery in Shanghai, and the Dhamma talks from that session were transcribed and published by a man called Charles Luke in a book called Chan and Zen Training, published by Ryder. And that was the very first meditation instruction Ajahn Sumedho had when he was a layman in the early 60s. And so Master Shu Yun was really Luang Por Sumedho's first Dharma teacher. And Master Xuan Hua, who was the founder of City of 10,000 Buddhas in America and the Gold Mountain Monastery in America, and a very influential Dharma teacher in America, and the person who gave us the land that forms Abhayagiri Monastery, he was a direct disciple of Master Shu Yun. And so he is a very significant figure in sort of Dharma life. And this photograph came from when Ajahn Jayasaro, who you might have heard of, was visiting China, which he does quite often, and he was staying at a monastery that was founded by Master Shu Yun, and was the abbot of the monastery was a direct disciple of Master Shu Yun, and he gave Ajahn Jayasaro a number of these large black and white photographs. So Ajahn Jayasaro gave me one of these. So that's why it sits on my wall. You're not the first person to ask that question. He doesn't look like a Theravada monk.
No, he doesn't. He looks more like, he looks more Zen. I thought he was Japanese, but then I got distracted from your talk, so I had to, yeah, I had to ask.
So his name means empty cloud. Master Shu Yun. That's probably a bad Chinese pronunciation, but forgive me for that. And the meditation question, yeah, I think dealing with dullness is there's many and various ways of working with that. I think it's not so much a matter of less effort or more effort, but right effort, effort that's in tune with Dhamma. Like if there's a thought, I've got a lot of dullness, I've got to get rid of it. What can I do to get rid of my dullness? Then that gives a framework of self-view. So particularly taking that self element out of it, just to consider, okay, in this moment, there's the experience of dullness. It's like this. Is one aspect of it. So to not look at it as a problem that I have got. So there's a Nalanda who owns that, who's the genuine owner of that dullness problem, but rather in this moment the mind is knowing this dull, sleepy feeling, and it's this way. So part of it. Another is that dullness tends to work very much like physical sleep, so that if you can catch the mind beginning to get caught into a dull state, like sleep works in cycles, dullness also does. So if there can be a noticing of the mind slipping into that, then that cycle can be stopped, can be broken. And so it's because the very means whereby you would notice that dullness beginning is not available because of being dull, then it's helpful to get different kinds of a cue. So one thing you can do is, if you sit with your hands in your lap and you have something like a pen, you can see that between your thumbs, then as soon as you start to get sleepy, it'll drop. And our fingers are very sensitive, or maybe if it drops on the floor like my pen did, then you'll hear it. But you'll certainly feel it with your fingers, as it drops. And so that's even though there isn't a conscious awareness of, oh, my mind is getting sleepy, the very fact that your thumbs have started to drop is indicating the beginning of that drifting off process. So that those kind of physical signals can be very, very helpful, because in a way the mental faculty alone can't be trusted, because it's dimming down. So taking a physical cue, like something in your hands or balanced on top of your head, as soon as your head starts to droop, then it'll also fall to the ground and be noticeable. So that and it can be really revealing, like you can feel like I'm wide awake, I'm totally awake, like, wow, I just dropped the pen again. I felt I was wide awake, but no. So those physical cues can be extremely helpful in that respect.
Thank you, Ajahn.
There's a question in my direct message chat line from, I believe it's Mr. Anu. I think you mentioned tanha being used in only one context in a wholesome way. Could you please clarify what was this context, please?
It's where a nun has fallen in love with the Venerable Ananda. And I can't remember the sutta reference, but a bhikkhuni has fallen in love with Venerable Ananda, or become obsessed with him. And she pretends to be ill so that Ananda will come to visit the nuns' section and come and see her. And she's got this plan to try and seduce him. So it's in that scenario where when Ananda goes to visit her, but he doesn't respond to her advances, and gives her a very good Dhamma teaching. And in that dialogue, then the word tanha is used in a wholesome way. So that again, I haven't memorized the exact sutta reference. You can probably look it up. You can find it on Google. Google, Ananda being seduced by a bhikkhuni, or bhikkhuni tries to seduce Ananda. You can find the sutta reference if you wish, but that's the only time, and that's a unique usage. And I checked the Pali of when Ananda speaks about desire in that exchange, and it is tanha. Oh, that's really interesting, because never seen tanha used in a skillful way. That he says something like, you should have tanha for the practice of Dhamma rather than tanha for other people. That's not going to bring any good result. And so it's surprising, but it's the only place in the canon that I know of. If anyone knows any others, then they can let me know. But that's the only one I'm aware of.
Thank you. There's another question from Kun Jervis Jia Xiong. I hope I pronounced correctly. We are all taught that we should not have cravings, attachment, and unhealthy desires. But what if what we desire is a practical need, such as a job, and we struggle to secure those needs? We have no choice but to strive for them. Yet this striving is giving us suffering.
Well, I've been talking about that for the last hour. I would say so chanda, a wholesome desire to hold down a job, to make some money, to support your family, support your own well-being. Yes, very good. The Buddha Dhamma doesn't speak in any critical way in terms of a skillful livelihood. Samma ajivo is also one of the factors of the Eightfold Path, right? Livelihood. Livelihood that's in tune with Dhamma. But again, the crucial thing is self-view and the I, me, mine. That if that job is being held down, I've got a job, I've got to do well, I need more money, I want the corner office, I need a raise, I want promotion, then all of that I and me is going to be creating dukkha, and it's going to make that kind of striving or engagement in that work a lot of suffering. If it's the work is being done as skillfully as possible, you're engaging in the activity of talking to people, creating objects, working in a school or a hospital or a factory or whatever it might be, that you're doing it, I'm doing this job in order to have a skillful livelihood. I'm trying to bring something useful into the world, and it's not going to make me ultimately happy, but in ordinary terms, this is something that can bring some benefit. And if I make a bit of money out of it, fine. If I don't, then and it doesn't look like I'm going to get enough to support the needs of the family, okay, maybe I'll think about finding a different job. So the whole field is related to in an unselfish way, and from a basis of pragmatism. So the guiding force is mindfulness and wisdom, rather than me wanting this and me not wanting that. So that makes a big difference. So that the practical need is being served. Yeah, the family needs support, but the mind is relating to success and failure, and those usual worldly considerations in a completely different way.
Thank you. Any other question? Feel free to raise your hand. So tomorrow is the Visakha Puja's day. And so at your temple, you will have the ritual things just like we do here in Thailand?
Somewhat. So we have a VNT and a candlelit circumambulation in the evening.
Nice.
So yeah, we have the main festival day will be Sunday, but Saturday we'll have the main part of the day will be ordinary schedule. We have a meditation class every Saturday afternoon, so that'll happen as usual. In the evening, we'll have puja, and then meditation. People take the 8 precepts. Then we have a Dhamma talk, and then after the Dhamma talk is finished, then we light the candles. At 9:30 at night. It's still daylight here. Very different from Thailand. So yeah, it's at 9:30. It's what they call dusk at about 10 o'clock now. So it's summertime is definitely here. So we just as it's dusk, we lighting the candles, and then when that's all ready, then we go and have a VNTN, walking 3 times around the shrine. We've the former stupa that we had here at Amaravati, we've dismantled to make way for another one that we're planning to build. And so we took the old stupa down, and the foundation was also not very well done. So we dismantled the old stupa, stored all the stones away, took it down to the ground, and then in the future we'll create a new solid foundation and build a new stupa. So it's a kind of non-manifest stupa at the moment. It's a non-physical stupa in the center of the field. So it's in the collective memory, but not on the ground. It's a space where there was a stupa. So it's also a manifestation of the teaching, because in the early days, the Buddha was never represented in human form. Buddha Rupas didn't appear in the world until about 350, 400 years after the Buddha passed away. He was always represented like as a pair of footprints, or the Bodhi tree, or an empty chair. That the Buddha, or Dhamma wheel, the Buddha was never represented in human form until the Greeks, the Greek invasion of northern India, and the Greeks brought in apparently the representations of the Buddha. So the earliest Buddha images, the Buddha looks like the Greek god Apollo, because it was the Greeks persuading the people to you need some statues of your great teacher. And so that's where Buddha Rupas originated from. First, it was considered inappropriate or missing the teaching to put the Buddha into a physical form.
Thank you. I will go for Vientiane also, I hope.
So on Sunday we'll have that's the main festival day. So we have about several hundred people will come. We have like a bindabat, a long bindabat line inside the monastery, and then we'll have a Dhamma talk in the afternoon. And so that's the main kind of festival gathering day. So that'll be, we expect maybe 300-400 people. We never know. It could be 500, 800. We may know.
That's a lot. So there's a comment from the last question. I have had 300 job application rejections the past year, and it has created suffering that I wish I could avoid. Okay.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
We have one last question, I think, from Miss Huile.
Hello, Ajahn. Good evening, and thank you for the most profound talk. So, as you were giving the Dhamma talk earlier, Dan Ajahn, I was also trying to reflect and contemplate what you were saying, and I had the questions about retirement as well, but I thought I had a bit of a epiphany about not self, and I think maybe it's because I've heard it before as well. So if that's not self, then there's no tanha, or no vibhava tanha, and therefore where that's not self, then everything is sankhara. So I thought that was my experience. And then another thought came that maybe a suggestion, Ajahn, that you could help to put your Dhamma talk into practical, like a practice for us. If you could maybe turn the Dhamma talk into a meditation session on effortless effort. Thank you, Ajahn.
If you're interested, it's all in English, but there on the Amaravati website there is a long article of mine I wrote as a chapter for a book that's called Effort, Contentment, and Goal-Directedness in Mind Training. Well, the main title is I'm Not Getting Anywhere in My Meditation. And the subtitle is Effort, Contentment, and Goal-Directedness in Mind Training. So if you look for that on the Amaravati website, it's there somewhere. I think it should be either in the articles, or sometimes things are stored in strange places, like you find Dhamma articles in the news section. They just go land in strange places sometimes. But if you look for I'm not getting anywhere in my meditation with my name on it, then you should find that. So that's quite long, but it covered a lot of the things I said today are covered in that. It's not so much a guided meditation, but that can also give a written resource for a lot of this material, and you can invent your own practices that help to develop these particular themes. There you are. There's someone's got the link up already. Nalanda has fished it out. Well done. Thank you, Nalanda.